Hi, and welcome to the barn, live from the barn studio. You got the Mox here, and I'm joined with a special guest online. We have Miss Patricia. I even just asked you if I was going to say it right. Patricia Patts. Patricia, how are you today?
I'm doing great. You actually did better than some people do. I've gotten really, really bad versions of Patricia Patts, so you're doing good.
Well, especially if you throw the Peppermint Patty in there, there's a lot of P's, right? Patricia
There's a-
Patts, best known for her work as Peppermint Patty. See, I still did it.
right? Well, Patricia Peppermint Patty Patts from Peanuts.
Oh, another one. Threw another one in there. Hey, we're really excited. You're coming into town at the ToyMan show at the
I
Machinist Mall in St.
know.
Louis, Missouri, July 13th, and in Bridgeton, Missouri. But it's kind of the St. Louis general area.
Yeah.
Admission is somewhere, and you can find that online somewhere. But over a
And
hundred
it's
vendors.
not very expensive to get in.
Yeah, it said $5 here, and I actually didn't even believe that. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cash, right?
Yeah, it's $5.
Wow, so cool. And I told you off air, me and my daughters are going to come. We are big Charlie Brown, Peanuts fans, and excited that we get to have a little conversation about your time and your experience with all of that today. So again, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you are so welcome. The funny thing is I'm a Peanuts fan too. I was just lucky enough to get to work with them.
And so, how did that originally? Because I know you were sort of like a child star, right? You had many other roles, and you were even involved with Annie at one point, maybe the
I
stage.
was, yeah. So I started acting the first time I was on stage, I was three. By seven, eight, I was actually professional. I was doing commercials and um, I did the New Little Rascals with Norman Lear. They made a part for me for a television show, which I recently found out they actually made part of it into a movie, but I don't think any of my part was in it. Um, and then I got the role of Annie, and it was the second national touring company, and we were up in San Francisco doing the show, and Charles Schulz, who was the creator of Peanuts, came to see the show, and Lee Mendelson, who was our producer, also came to see the show on a different night, and they called each other up and said, "Hey, I found the new Peppermint Patty," and the other one was like, "No, I found the new Peppermint Patty. Wait, no, 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 no." And eventually, they figured out that they were arguing about me. So,
Wow.
uh, yeah, so I got the part, which was pretty cool.
And how old would you have been?
So I was 10 when I started. I did my second one probably when I was 11, and my last one when I was 12.
So at the age of 10, so Peanuts was already around at that point, right? Help me with the time.
Oh, had been on for years. I think the first special came on in like 1965. And I was born in 67.
So
So,
were you even just maybe even generally aware of that at that time?
oh,
Because
absolutely. Absolutely. My family, like every other family in America, when the Peanut specials would come on, when Halloween, Christmas, Easter, my mom would go to the store, she'd get us a king size candy bar, which we didn't normally have candy in the house. There were five kids. That's way too much sugar and way too much energy and way too much
I know
money.
that.
And she would get Jiffy Pop popcorn, which is the kind that you put on the stove and you shake it, and it
Yeah.
has this little silver foil that would puff up. It's great fun. And my family would sit around and watch the shows. And the Sound of Music and The Wizard of Oz. Those were the three things. If they were going to be on TV, my family was going to get together and we were all going to watch it together. And, it's funny because I look back on all of that now. We were not a close family. We didn't vacation. There were too many of us. We didn't hang out. We weren't huggy, touchy, feely kind of a family. We did theater together and we watched those shows. And that's really my core memories of being a kid with my family. So it was, in retrospect, it's a little strange that I got the part and got to be one of the voices.
Now, when you do some of these meet and greets and people come up and they tell you what that what your maybe role specifically or just Peanuts in general means to them. And maybe they share some of those same things, that it was sitting around TV, which is very different these days. We don't really sit around
Absolutely.
TV. Americans, we don't really do that anymore. It's
Yeah.
changed a lot.
Yeah.
But when people come up and talk to you about those things and they tell you what it means to them personally, what does that mean to you?
You know, I think we have become a really lonely society. And so any way that we can make a connection to one another, I think is important. And I think that's what draws people to Comic Cons and to toy shows, like ToyMan, is we get a moment of making that connection to our childhood, to a simpler time when we didn't worry so much, when we didn't work so hard. Um, and so making those moments and those connections, I just think are vitally important to us as humans. So I take that uh, I take that very seriously. I really enjoy meeting the fans, hearing their experiences, sharing those connections with them, um, because that's who we are as humans. We need that connection.
So you would have been at 10 at the time, and you had
Yes.
some experience in acting, but did you have voiceover experience? And was that a new thing for you? And how did that process go? How did you learn to do it? This would have been the late 70s, right?
So the late 70s, 1978, 79. I had never done a voiceover before. Um, I haven't done a voiceover since, although I have something
Really?
on the books, which I can't talk about, but I'm very excited about it. And uh, I think I was such a confident kid that it didn't occur to me to be intimidated by any of it. I wish I had that confidence now as an adult. But so I just sort of walked in, believing that it was just a voiceover. It was going to be easy. Like I didn't have to memorize anything. I didn't have to, um, I stood in front of a script. And in fact, if I had wanted to, I could have just had our director, Bill Melendez, would feed the lines to the kids most of the time. Um, and I could have just had him do that. Now, I happen to be a bit of a smart aleck, and I
Mhm.
told him that I knew how to read. And so he let me just sort of run with it, which was just fun. So yeah, it wasn't difficult at all. I would love to do more of it because it really is pretty simple, I think.
You talk about being confident at that time. Do you think your work on the stage and in other roles and other films, do you think that that led to some of that confidence, or were you just always generally that way?
I think part of it came from I'm a three quarters full girl. Um, I just seem to have this disposition of it'll all be fine. It may suck right at the moment, but in a week it'll be fine. In a year it'll be fine. Um, so I think that was part of it. I think while my family was not a touchy-feely family, I knew they had my back. I knew that whatever I wanted to do or not do, my parents were behind us 100%. My mom didn't want me to audition for Annie. She had just gotten off of doing Annie Get Your Gun with Debbie Reynolds and Gavin McLeod with my older sister and brother. And she sat there and said, I don't want to sit in another green room that's beige. I'm not taking you to the audition. And I was on my knees crying, saying, if you loved me, you take me. And my brother looked at her and said, but mom, it's our destiny. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll take you to the audition. Um, but other than that, like that's literally the only time I can think of where my mom was like, no, I don't want to do this. Otherwise, it was really there were things that I auditioned for along the way that I didn't feel comfortable with. And my mom would say, "Do you understand what they want you to do?" And I would say, "Yeah." And she'd say, "Is that something you want to do?" "No." And she'd go, "Okay, then we won't do it." And, we'd walk away from the project. So I always knew my parents had my back, which now that I'm an adult and I've spoken to other child actors, that is not the norm. Um, a lot of my other friends are like, yeah, I could have never said no. I could have. Now, if I was tired, if there was an audition going on and I was like, oh, I just don't want to go, my mom would push a little bit on that. Um, but she would always say, well, you just need to sparkle for 5 minutes. That's all you need to do. Just sparkle for 5 minutes and you'll be fine. And there were times that her pushback would be, well, if you don't want to do this anymore, that's fine by me. And I'd be like, no, 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 I want to do it. I want to do it. I'm just tired today. And she'd be like, well, sparkle. She was from Boston, so she had this funny accent. But so I think some of it was just my natural disposition, and some of it was this knowledge that my family was there and they were backing me. Because I certainly lost it along the way, which I think back on now, and it's pretty sad that I lost that confidence. But there are always going to be people around that don't like people who have confidence, who believe in themselves.
Yeah, and I would say if we're, talking specifically about Peppermint Patty, well, she was kind of confident, right?
She was.
There, yeah, she was kind of confident and outspoken, not afraid to speak up and kind of speak her,
Yeah, which
as a character.
when you consider that she was made in 1966, when a woman couldn't own a home, when a woman couldn't have a checking account or a savings account or a credit card with her own name, she had to have it either with her father or with her husband. Um, it's pretty amazing that he came up with this character that was so bold and assertive and really had such great leadership skills. And she wasn't a perfect character. One of the things I love about Peanuts is that nobody was perfect. Charlie Brown was chronically depressed. Linus has serious anxiety issues. Um, Lucy's a narcissist. Um, and uh, and so Peppermint Patty had her own issues as well. She was a little clueless sometimes. She would speak her mind, and sometimes in ways that wasn't as nice as she could have been, and would have been again a little clueless that she had said anything inappropriate. She called Snoopy a weird little kid. She
Right.
didn't get that he was a dog.
Yeah.
But also like he was kind of standing there half the time when she would go, he's kind of a weird little kid, but but he's a great shortstop,
Right.
So I and then the other thing that I think is really unique about what Charles Schulz did with this character is nobody made fun of her. Nobody said she couldn't be a leader within their friend group. They all deferred to her when it came to anything that had to do with sports, because she was obviously the best at them and the leader. And so they would go to her and they would say, hey, I need swimming lessons. She was the swim instructor. So I just think there's so much about it that, it's as a kid, it's fun to watch these and see the interactions and see what Snoopy does. But as an adult, to go back and watch all of these shows and see them from that adult perspective, they really are unique and interesting and oddly informative, I think, in how to deal with relationships. Um, because it's hard to make friends. It's really easy to lose friends. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a Reddit fan.
Yeah.
And the first thing that everybody says is, "Oh, drop that person. Oh, divorce him. Oh, get rid of him. They're toxic." Um, and to watch these shows and go, they weren't perfect, but they tried and they kept their friendships intact. I think is a pretty powerful lesson.
Talk about the characters and sort of them representing, a lot of people. You talk about, anxiety and maybe some
Yeah,
depression, and then the
yeah.
outgoing, confident one. The depth of the writing, how much do you attribute the success to that? Like you said, as a child, you look at it and you see it maybe for, what it just looks like and kind of feels like and the humor associated with it. But once you kind of dig a little bit deeper, there's a lot of depth in that writing. And
Yeah.
whether it's intentional or not, there's definitely, it seems like all society might be, not all of society, but a lot of society is represented in that way in the characters.
It absolutely is. And that's one of the great things when I meet fans is that they'll come up and they'll say, "I'm a Charlie Brown type." And I think that's why it's been 75 years and people still love it because they can relate to it so much. And if you take the opportunity to read his biography, one of the great things that I learned from it was that literally everybody in the show was based on somebody that he knew. And so while I don't think he uh, sat there and said, "Oh, well, I'm going to make a chronically depressed young boy," I don't think there was that thought process behind it. I think, he had been in World War II. He had come home with all the other troops. All the men that he worked with had all gone to war. Um, and they didn't talk about depression. And yet, I am quite certain that depression was a thing back then. And so I think he was just sort of instinctually writing these unique people that were in his life day in and day out, and using the moments from his own life to instill in these characters uh, a connection with the rest of the world and with each other.
You talk about being cast for it, and you met him at that point. Did you, spend any time with him after that as when you're doing some of the voiceover work?
I did actually. I happened to be going through San Francisco at one point, and he invited me up to his house in Santa Rosa, brought me into his studio. Um, I found out years later, not very many people went into his studio. Um, and he showed me what he was working on, and we got in the car and he drove me around Santa Rosa. He took me to his ice skating rink, which now is right next to the museum in Santa Rosa. But back when he was alive, the museum wasn't there. That only came about after he passed away. So he took me to the ice skating rink, told me the story about why he had built it, got me a hot chocolate from the Snoopy Cafe. It was great. It was great. And we had a great afternoon together. And he was just he was quiet. He was very gentle. He was very kind. Um, and he had a sense of humor. It was kind of quiet. You had to look for it sometimes, but it was there. And yeah, so I have a really great memory of that.
Yeah, and I would say that's pretty on brand for the style of humor, specifically with Charlie Brown, but just Peanuts
Yeah,
in general, right? You kind of, not that you
yeah,
have to search for it, but it's not overtly there. It's not in your
right.
face.
Right.
Which
It's not a, hey, I'm going to tell you a joke.
yeah.
Ta-da! It's not that. You have to sort of read between the lines and go, oh, wait a minute. Um, so
Can
yeah,
you appreciate, I think of something that's a little bit more modern, although it's been in the culture for a long time now, something like The Simpsons, where there's
yeah,
sometimes this, I wouldn't say hidden message, but you have to kind of be on top of the cartoon to really appreciate it. And maybe that's, for a different kind of viewer than at the time with Peanuts, but are
yeah.
you able to appreciate things like that?
So I didn't watch The Simpsons a whole lot. Um, I don't really have an explanation as to why. When I was younger, I didn't watch much television. Actually, it's kind of funny. I don't watch much television now,
Really?
which for an actor, you would think I'd be,
Yeah.
all involved and absorbed with it. And it just didn't appeal to me. Um, I can't tell you why. Um, so I know of The Simpsons, obviously. I've watched a few episodes of it, but maybe not enough to comment on it.
How do you, just talking personally here, how do you spend a lot of your time?
Lately, I've been doom scrolling a lot,
As have a lot of people.
as we all do. So that needs to stop. Um, I I have my dogs, I have my friends. Um, I love spending time with them, and I don't know. I lead a pretty quiet life most of the time, except when I go to Comic Cons, and then you got to put the sparkle on.
Yeah. And I would say that's pretty good advice by your mom. Might have to use that in my own parenting.
Right? Right. Well, and what's funny is even today, like when there's something that I really don't want to do, um, I'll that little voice will say, if you just sparkle for 5 minutes. And what inevitably happens is in that 5 minutes of faking it, oh, everything's great. Everything's great. Within that 5 minutes, I end up going, you know what? Everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I would use that if I was going in for a job interview, um, an important conversation that you need to have with somebody, um, to go into it with a sense of um, joy, if you can, hopefulness, if you can, um, and I think it spins your perspective and puts you in a different frame of mind.
Yeah, and I would say there's a lot of wisdom to that. And
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, we always kind of talk about faking it till you make it. Well, you can
yeah,
sometimes even convince yourself and put yourself in a different kind of state just by
exactly.
faking it, right? Or put a certain song on that gets you energized or whatever it is where
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you can
Well,
kind of
and
power through a lot.
to be honest, there's no difference between that and what people call manifesting.
Right.
Um, if you believe that the worst is going to happen, that nothing good is ever going to happen to you, that the whole world is out to get you, if that's what you believe, then that's what you're going to see. Whether that's an actual truth or not, it becomes your focus, and so even the slightest things, the guy that cuts you off in traffic, you're going to be like, see, I told you everything bad happens to me, right? And what I have found is that when I go through life with you know what, I'm going to look for the good. The bad still happens. The bad is always going to happen, right? But I had a car accident a year ago, and that sucked. It really sucked. And yes, I got hurt. Um, could have been a lot worse. I did walk away. Yes, I have a car payment now. The car payment sucks, but I love my new car. And so to sort of balance that with everything that you do, I just think again, I'm a three-quarters full girl. But I think it makes life a little easier because life can be really, really hard. And I see it every day online, that people are struggling, that they're alone, they're scared. Um, and I think a little hopefulness can go a long way.
Care if I use a little personal example of that here recently?
Please.
We're near St. Louis, and you're in the Midwest too, right? Are you in Tennessee?
I'm near Nashville. Yeah,
Okay. So you know that we have a heat wave that had started late last week, and it's really,
it's bad.
it's kind of bad right now, right? And I think a lot
Yeah.
of countries experiencing that. Well, it started for us probably last Thursday, and that was the day our air conditioner decided to check out.
I'm
So
so
talk
sorry.
So talk about bad timing, and that's one of those things. I mean, this is a silly example, but it's an example nonetheless. Is like something that you don't even really put all that much thought into when it's not there. When we have to go through the weekend in 95-degree weather without AC, boy,
Right.
you sure appreciate it when the guy shows up on Tuesday to fix it. And I think some of that's just appreciating
Right.
what we do have,
Right.
trying to be aware and mindful and intentional about saying, "Hey, here's some gratitude. Here's some
Right.
some
Right.
humility. Um,
And
it's
you
not
had
perfect, but
you had the money to fix it,
true. Yeah.
I mean, because there are people out there that their air conditioner goes out and they don't have the money to even hire somebody to come out and look at it to tell them what's wrong with it.
Or they don't have it at all.
Or they don't have it at all.
Yeah.
So, like taking those moments to go, whew, yeah, it really sucked that that happened, but we went a weekend without it, but we had the money. The guy was able to come out on Tuesday and it's fixed now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot to be grateful for. And I think if we take those moments and focus on them, I think we end up being happier in the long run.
Side note, a little perspective that was added to that is I was moody all weekend. And it was because I was uncomfortable all weekend.
Yeah.
So it actually made me think about, what a luxury AC is to have because
Right.
people don't, obviously, even some like, third world countries kind of started thinking about that. So I walked away, even though I was grumpy as hell and you probably wouldn't want to be around me. When that air did come, man, I was so appreciative of that. So I think
Yeah.
that's a little lesson there, even for my own personal self,
Yeah.
of just gratitude and being grateful.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Back on the peanuts.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced or encountered, say you're at the grocery store or somebody calls you on the phone and they recognize the voice? Uh,
No.
really?
No. I've had a couple of times um, where somebody recognized my name, because it's a pretty not very many people have it. In fact, I don't think anybody has it but me. Um, and uh, and it's very memorable. So like one time my daughter was doing something at a local theater here in town, and my name had been listed as her contact. And one of the people that was working on it came up to her and said, "Hey, I noticed your contact is Patricia Patts." And she was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "This is a crazy question, but she didn't happen to do Annie when she was a kid, did she?" And my daughter went, "Yes."
Yeah, totally
Because
not
my daughter
cool.
could care less that I did anything. And this woman like completely freaked out and was like, "Oh my gosh, I saw her." Oh, no. So I every once in a while I'll have that. And like I was at a Comic-Con once, I was talking to a fellow actor, and And he asked me how I had gotten the role. And I said, "Oh, well, I was doing a play." And he goes, "Oh, what play were you doing?" And I said, "Oh, it was 1978. I was doing Annie in Los Angeles." And he goes, "You were Annie in 1978?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "In Los Angeles?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "At the Schubert Theater?" And I go, Yes, because that was not information I had given him. And he completely fanboyed on me. Started going, "Oh my God, you were on Merv Griffin. You were on Dinah Shore. You were on Dinah Shore with Andrea McArdle and sang Tomorrow with Dinah Shore and Andrea McArdle." I was like, "Yes. How did you know all that?"
Ultimate fan, it sounds like.
He was. He was. It was funny. And it was funny to see the change that comes over people. Um, because, I was an actor, but kind of here, I was a voice actor. And then all of a sudden it was like, "Oh, she was Annie."
Oh, right.
And, to me, even as a kid, I used to say to my mom, "I don't understand why everybody gets so worked up. I'm just doing a job. I'm just me. I still get dressed the same way. I'm still going to school. I'm still, why does everybody freak out?" And my mom was like, "Well, not everybody gets to do these things and not everybody has the talent that you have." And I was like, "Everybody in my family does."
Yeah,
And
because you're one of five, right?
I'm one of five, but I was not the savant in my family. I have an older brother. His name is Donnie. He goes by Donnie Vox, Vox. He lives in Germany, and they refer to him as the human jukebox. My brother can play any instrument, any song. He has to hear it once, and he knows exactly what chords to play. He can harmonize. One time he picked up a violin that my little brother was trying to learn on, and he literally went, "Oh, I've never played one of these." Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. And my little brother and I were like, "What?" And so he was the one that everybody was like, "Oh, he's the talented one," within our family structure. Now, once you got outside of that, then it became, "Oh, this whole family is so talented." Um, but within our family, like I was just, the fourth of five. Who cares? Um, so I think it sort of tempered my, like, there was no way I was going to get a big head in a family like that.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, we've kept you too long, but really enjoyed this conversation and
Oh no, I've had
exci-
great time.
excited for the ToyMan show at the Machinist Hall in July 13th, St. Charles Rock Road in Bridgeton, Missouri, the greater St. Louis area, and general admission $5. 16
Yeah. Yeah.
all
And I understand like that first off, it's been going on for years, but some of the people that bring the people that bring in toys, the vendors, it's really quite the show from what I understand.
Yeah, we've been before. It's a great time. And
Yeah.
do you have a certain time? Are you gonna one you're gonna be signing and doing some signings and some meet and greets?
I will be doing some signings. When I go, I bring a lot of merchandise with me, a lot of Snoopy stuff. I bring baseballs that I can sign. I have earrings and necklaces that I bring, uh, purses, t-shirts. So I have a lot of fun stuff to look at and buy, even if you're not necessarily interested in an autograph. But then I also have about 30 pictures that I bring that people can get signed if that's what they're into. So, yeah, just come on out and have some fun.
Yeah, we're
Life's too
excited
short.
about it. Yeah, absolutely. And what's your I know you have a website. What's your website?
I do. It's pretty simple. patriciapatts.com.
There it is, right
Again,
there.
I'm the only one. So,
Thank you so much for your time today, and we can't wait for
Thank you.
ToyMan Show July 13th.
July 13th. I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks.